Hi, I'm Caroline. Welcome to the Stylish Pen, where Susan Scott and I have authentic conversations on the sometimes heartbreaking world of writing, editing, and publishing. Today, we're going to take an in-depth look at breaking down a book. So you might be asking yourself, what do we mean by breaking down a book? So I have a film background. I went to film school, and first day of film school, you get really excited and you go to your class and they show you a movie and everybody gets up and leaves at the end of the movie. And the next time you walk into that class, there's a professor standing at the front yelling at you for how disrespectful you were to all the hardworking people who made that movie possible. And also reminding you that at some point, hopefully in the not too distant future, your name might be in those credits. And there might be audiences all over the world being just as disrespectful and leaving before your name comes up on the screen. So as soon as we started working together, the first thing I personally realized about Susan was that every time I would have to bring her a book report, she would first question, who's it published by? Read the front to me, read the back to me, and give me all the other information before I even had to give you my thoughts on the book, right? That was first thing.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I love that analogy, the film analogy, because, if you are those people, and of course it's different now when you're streaming, people just, the credits just zip by. But if you're the old school and you sit in the theater and you just sit there and you drink in those, you drink in those credits because it's fascinating. You realize, oh my God, it's a whole world of people behind this one production. And it's exactly the same in the book world. And if we just treat books as consumers, then we forget that. We just think about the content and do I like it or I not like it, heart or no heart, thumbs up, thumbs down. No, not the way to talk about a book, a literature. And every book is its own world. It's a microcosm. And there's so much rich information that you get about that will help you think about the content differently if you understand what the world is that you've got in your hands. And we're just assuming we're talking about books that we're still holding in our hands. I mean, you can do this with ebooks, but there's something really satisfying about because you still order books hard copy. Yeah, I love that.
I think it comes from traveling and living in Europe and not having the books. Now I just miss them, and
That's interesting.
Prefer to hold them. So we can start. This is the Equivalents by Maggie Doherty. For everybody out there, you can see them. So this book is, I love when it's still fresh. It still cracks.
We can hear that. You can hear that when you open it. Yeah, beautiful sound.
So I don't know if you want to walk me through it, or do you want me just to start telling you things about it?
Well, so what struck me with that one, I thought, okay, this is a big book, right? This is you holding it. I don't have the book with me, so I'm dependent on what you're telling me. I thought, okay, this is a big mother of a book. Look at the size of this. I mean,
it really is.
What's the pagination in that? What is that? How many hundreds of pages is it?
I mean, she has quite a long line, quite a long index, and also notes because. And an epilogue. Like there's quite a lot, but the book itself, including all the notes and everything. So the book itself is 315 pages. And then including notes and index and everything, we're at 370 pages. And then there's illustration credits for another 2 pages. But
it also has illustrations in it. That's interesting because typically that is typical of what would be an academic press, but it's not an academic press book, is it?
No. It's a Borzoi book published by Alfred A. Knopf. Right. I learned. And actually in Canada, it's by Penguin Random House for Canada. But it is quite academic when you're reading it. Although it reads really easily too. It reads very smoothly, not like some academic books, but it is quite academic because she is studying these 5 women who were at the forefront of women's revolution, basically. So
Right.
it definitely does have that.
So that's an interesting tension because normally a book that has what we would say academic apparatus, like notes
Right.
or endnotes and an index, etc.,
It's a lot.
that would be normally handled by a university press. But obviously, Knopf or whoever her editor is at Borzoi said, "Look, we think this has a broader readership, but we want it to be a crossover book, right? We want people to be able to use it in courses or refer to it, so other scholars will know that this was properly researched. But we also want it on talk shows, and we want it to, kind of enter the mainstream of the cultural conversation. So they've kind of done a both and." By putting all of that together and running with a mainstream publisher like that.
Yeah, and we should also note that she teaches writing at Harvard. So
there you go. So
she has some credentials.
She has it in.
And she actually earned her PhD at Harvard. So,
and she teaches there. Good. Okay. So we're on the right track. We're on the right track though, right? Just by reading this material. Okay.
And then for me, just the feel of this book, I know we didn't talk about that too much, but I love the raw edge paper too. It just feels like it almost feels like you're reading their handwritten work, even though it's not. But that brings me to a note on the type, because that is actually longer than her bio, which is hilarious. They spent more time talking about that. So the text in this book was set in Miller, designed by Matthew Carter, born in 1937, with assistance from Tobias Frere Jones and Cyrus Highsmith. Miller is named for William Miller, founder of the Miller and Richard Foundry of Edinburgh. Composed by North Market Street Graphics, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, printed and bound by Berryville Graphics, Berryville, Virginia, and then designed by Maggie Hinders. And I've never seen that extra little bit.
Yeah, that's beautiful. To me, that is so gratifying too, because it takes us out into the whole artisanal world of all those people committed to those various arts. Did you say binding? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh no. Read about the binding. Yeah, we have to get binding in there too.
So it's printed and bound by Berryville Graphics, Berryville, Virginia.
Okay.
And then the design on top of that too, is you never hear about the design, and which I think is so wonderful. And you're right, it does. It makes me feel like I'm almost reading her handwritten journal. Mm-hmm. It really kind of, it makes it, just for me at least, that much more special.
Yeah. I was sort of, I would say, admittedly oblivious to the power of choices of typeface and book design until the universe sent a wonderful typographer my way, just as a person, as a friend. And then she was the one who helped me understand that typeface and questions about issues about type are everything. It's like the secret to the universe. Typeface. And I went, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And it's true. And design, right? Everything that's created.
I've definitely read books that are, I've definitely read books that where you pick it up and it feels kind of cheap and it's hard to read. I think typeface should be this beautiful thing that you don't even notice until you do.
Exactly. Right? You just swim in that. Yeah. And for them to make a choice about the kind of typeface that would be the right for that book is really interesting. And obviously they're thinking that some of the audience at least is going to be appreciative. Who would know that there'd even be a little podcast with it making an homage to the typeface,
Exactly.
Pretty obscure, but it is a sign of respect, just like your film teacher said back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. It made me love, and it actually makes me love it that much more. Because I feel like I'm being invited into their secret world. So the next book is Sidewalks by Valeria Luiselli. And this is completely different because this is a really small indie press that put this one out of New York. And it's actually also a translation, which is really nice. So it's first published in the United States by Coffee House Press. Never heard of them, did check them out, would like to be published by them when they start.
Just saying, just putting it out there.
Yeah, just, I'm throwing it out in the world. It'd be pretty cool. but it is nice too. So it was actually published in English in Great Britain by Granta Books, and then it was also published in Spanish in Mexico. So it's kind of, you have that whole list of this book's history almost before you even start reading it, which is
Right.
pretty cool.
So was it originally published in Spanish or simultaneously in Spanish and English?
No, it was 2010 in Spanish and then 2013 in English. But in Great Britain, before it hit, and then in 2014, like a year later, it was Coffee House Press in the US.
Okay, interesting. So even
Yeah,
though the English language version in Great Britain would be a different, and
English.
that's so interesting to think about,
Yeah,
a different English,
that's
exactly.
right. And I kind of like that too. So it's like you get the whole history of the book before you even start reading the book. And it just works with her theme of movement and travel so well anyway.
Amazing.
Um, and then the other fun thing too is, so her bio is on the back page. So the author is well taken care of. But in that whole section in the back at the end, where usually you see acknowledgments and all of that, you don't have that. The very first person who is acknowledged, and it's by the press really, is the translator.
Uh-huh.
She has her own little section in the back, which is nice.
Hmm.
And then you have a little bit more about the other books that have been published by them. And then you have a little thing about Coffee House Press and who they are.
Which again is unusual. Usually you don't see that, and you would see it on their website, but typically you don't typically see that inside the
But
kind of,
I like that as a reader.
yeah,
I think that's neat because,
yeah, that's
and
interesting.
honestly, just from a marketing perspective, it's great because what did I do? The first thing I did is Google them and see who they are. So,
Yeah.
signed up for their newsletter. Then they have quite a long list of their people who fund them. So they have their funders, which is a whole page, just big long list of people.
Mhm.
And then they have their publisher press circle. So everybody who's donated money, everybody who has helped them out along the way gets a thank you. And
Wow.
it's the press, not her, which is
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's a very interesting model that they're
Yeah.
using, because typically you would just see the funder's logo, right, at the
Yeah.
opening of the book, but they're naming their they're naming their donors and sponsors, which means donors and
Yeah.
sponsors know that if they're giving a certain amount of money, their names are going right into the books themselves. It's very smart.
I just thought of this. It's the same thing when you go to the ballet, you go to the theater, and there's that wall of
Yep.
them thanking people for their
Yep. They're
help,
in the
for their
playbill.
support.
Or in the playbill, right?
Yeah,
There it is. Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
love that. And then probably my favorite thing, and this is that like little teaser that you get at the end of the movie sometimes, they have a stamp on the back and it says, literature is not the same thing as publishing.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. And that's the last word in kind of the last word in the book. Is that right?
Yep.
Before you get to the author's page on the book. I love
Yep.
that. So what does
It
that
is
make you think? Like
literally.
when you read that at the very end, where does that take you? What does it spark for you?
I mean, it definitely, it's like one of those deep moments where you stop and think about it. But I love that because I think what it tells me is that there's just so much out there in the world to discover.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Just because it's just because, I mean, of course I have easier access to it if it's published, when when my brain kicks in, but the first thing my heart says is go out and see the world.
Wow. That's very interesting. Oh, I love that. That's interesting. So when I hear that, the first thing I think of is probably a bit more pedantic, but I think, oh yeah, that's the reminder that literature is the world building. Literature is
That's true.
the human enterprise of trying to understand meaning, and publishing is it's the workhorse way of kind of getting there and showcasing things. So this must be a press that cares about both, because they are a press, they are a
Yeah.
publisher, but their heart is in the publishing venture. This is what I attribute to them. But so I have the same reaction to you. It's like, oh, I can hardly wait to Google them, and find out more about them, because this is
Yeah.
what a fabulous thing that they do, just hooking us as readers before we even read the content. We're
Yeah.
already just invested in who are these people? Who's Coffee House Press? who are these translators? Like they've done a beautiful job of making us care before
Oh,
we even get
absolutely.
into the
Yeah.
sidewalks is about, right?
And yeah, as from a writing point of view, I mean, the first thing I thought of was like, oh, I'd like to work with them.
Uh-huh. There you
Right.
go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Duly,
So,
they'll be duly noted.
I'm on their
Visit
newsletter.
here someday and you don't show up for the interview. I'll know where you are. I'll know where to, I'll know where to come.
I'll be hanging with them in New York having a coffee.
Okay.
So the last book, and this one is like, this is like the tiniest little book, right? It's like literally, I have small hands and it is the size of my hand.
Love it.
And it's The Clothing of Books. And I had no idea what it was when I picked it up. And then I realized it's kind of what we're talking about.
Hmm.
And it works so well because it really is, she breaks this down of like what goes into a book, like both physically. I don't know if you can see this very well, but
Yeah.
it's a jacket, right, with buttons. So it really is. She's breaking down the physicality of what goes into a book. She talks about her own books and choosing book covers for her own books and how that happened. And then it really is like how the book goes. So she's like, I've read hundreds of books, almost all the literature of my schooling, without a summary blurb on the flap, without an author photograph. They had an anonymous quality, secretive. They gave nothing away in advance. And here we are breaking down all of that. So it's quite wonderful. So if I think for anybody who still doesn't really understand what we're talking about, start here. It's,
Wow.
yeah, it's very short. It's 71 pages and they're tiny.
Yeah.
So and
it's Jumpalahiri. I mean, honestly,
yeah,
anything
she's
she
just
writes is
amazing.
like magic, right?
Yeah.
So if this is her,
Yeah.
she's what a great ride. Like just pick her up and you can follow her anywhere. Her voice is incredible and just her sensibility
Oh
is.
yeah. And this is really easy. It's a really easy book to read
What a
too.
neat gift book that is, though, too,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
That's a perfect. Just saying, like Mother's Day just passed, but like there are lots of things on the calendar that would be. That's a perfect book to slip into somebody's, whatever, or as a hostess book.
Oh,
For,
absolutely.
like
It's
anything. That's
wonderful.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
anybody who reads, this is such a good book. She breaks down the cover. Like she just breaks down the whole book, so it's really wonderful.
Who published it? To do what we always do.
Good question. Vintage Books, a division of Penguin Random House.
Yeah. Okay. So it's her regular publisher. Yeah, and they would know that this would be. And how long is it? It's not very long, right?
Yeah, it's like 70 pages. Yeah, and tiny pages with fairly large text.
Yeah,
too, so it's pretty.
It's a
easy.
great little starter guide to thinking about.
Okay, I have to read this and I promise, randomly open. I have
Yes.
no
Okay.
stickies in this book.
Okay.
She talks about it. So she basically talks about the book and how to read it. Today, the relationship between reader and book is far from mediated with a dozen people buzzing around. We are never alone together, the text and I. I miss the silence. I miss the mystery of the naked book, solitary without support. It allows one to read in freedom without previews or introductions. I believe that a naked book, too, can stand on its own feet. Unfortunately, it can't be sold that way. Almost no one wants to buy something unknown, not even a book, without prior information.
Wow.
So I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. So hence talking about the clothing. Wow.
And then in some ways, today's reader resembles a tourist who, thanks to the guidebooks, this is thanks to the impact of the book jacket, begins to inform and orient himself before disembarking in an unknown place, before discovering it, before being there, before reading.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, I love it. Perfect choice. Great combination. I love that you brought those three things. And hopefully it would get people excited. Like just go to your bookshelf and pull random books off and start thinking about it. Yeah.
Or ask us some questions. We're more than happy to answer. So yeah, thank you so much again for today. It was amazing. Thank you everybody for joining us, and make sure to like and follow us. And we will see you next time with a behind the scenes look at everything books, editing, and publishing.
And heartbreak, the heartbreak.
Yeah, that's right. And the heartbreak.
Okay. See you soon.
Thank you.